Cleveland fans think they know the QB plan, but everything you hear on TV and social media is misleading. Behind closed doors, the Browns' strategy is crystal clear, but the media keeps stirring chaos. Today, we uncover what's really happening with Sanders, the locker room, and the team's hidden blueprint. Cleveland fans are hearing one story on air, but the truth inside the building tells a completely different tale. For months, media personalities have been pushing narratives that suggest the Browns' quarterback situation is up in the air, questioning whether Shedeur Sanders really has the starting job locked down. Rumors about Malik Willis, veteran stopgaps, and even the potential involvement of Deshaun Watson keep surfacing every week, creating a whirlwind of uncertainty. But when you dig into the organizational signals, it's clear that this chaos isn't accidental, it's manufactured. Andrew Barry, the Browns' general manager, hasn't been vague. In official interviews, he drew direct comparisons to Baker Mayfield's rookie year in 2020, outlining a deliberate strategy: surround the young quarterback with real weapons, protection, and development-focused coaching. That's not speculation, that's the blueprint. Barry even highlighted that Todd Monken was specifically hired for his ability to develop young quarterbacks, a detail that undermines any notion that the team is prioritizing veteran short-term solutions. The organization is signaling a clear direction, yet some Cleveland media voices continue to question Sanders' readiness as if nothing has been said. The gap between the media narrative and organizational reality is striking. When pro players like Myles, Garrett, Denzel Ward, and Shelby Harris openly voice confidence in Sanders, it reinforces the front office's plan. Yet these endorsements rarely dominate headlines the way uncertainty and rumor do. Instead of amplifying clarity, the coverage cycles back to alternative quarterbacks, feeding confusion rather than insight. G. Bush, a respected local analyst, has called this out directly, nomming personalities like Mary Kay Kitt, Jason Lloyd, and Ken Carman, accusing them of pushing an anybody but Sanders agenda that ignores what the Browns have publicly committed to. This isn't just about media opinion, it's about incentives. Controversy drives engagement, and engagement drives revenue. Stable quarterback situations don't trend. Suggesting instability keeps discussions alive, clicks coming, and ratings high. But the real cost is fan perception. When official signals from the GM, coaches, and locker room consistently point toward Sanders, yet daily speculation suggests otherwise, fans start questioning the franchise's priorities, creating unnecessary anxiety and a distorted view of reality. At its core, this section isn't just a debate over talent, it's a clash between narrative control and organizational transparency. The Browns' plan is methodical, structured, and public. The media cycle, intentionally or not, keeps spinning alternatives that the team has already addressed. And that tension, that disconnect, is exactly what's shaping Cleveland sports conversation right now. But that isn't the full story. Inside the Browns' locker room, the story couldn't be clearer. While outside voices debate and speculate, the players themselves are sending one consistent message: Shedeur Sanders is the quarterback the team is building around. Myles Garrett, the face of the Browns' defense, didn't hedge. He didn't speak in vague generalities. He said Shedeur will get the first shot at the starting role and the team is fully behind him. That kind of statement from a cornerstone player isn't casual chatter. It's leadership speaking directly to organizational trust and team alignment. Denzel Ward echoed the same sentiment, emphasizing that Sanders has the opportunity to step in and claim the role if he wants it. That's endorsement from another elite-level player, reinforcing not just talent but belief in readiness and leadership. Shelby Harris also added his voice, calling Sanders a locker room leader and highlighting that the team is behind him. These aren't quotes pulled from obligation or PR spin. These are genuine statements reflecting the locker room's confidence in the young quarterback. Even younger players like Quinshon Judkins chimed in, praising Sanders' chemistry with teammates and his influence on and off the field. That's critical because quarterback success isn't just about individual skill, it's about timing, rhythm, and alignment across position groups. When multiple position groups, from defensive stars to offensive contributors, express confidence in one player, it reinforces stability. It signals that the organization, the coaching staff, and the locker room are all on the same page. Contrast that with the ongoing media speculation. Every week, names like Malik Willis, M. Jones, or other veteran quarterbacks reappear as potential alternatives, despite lacking the development trajectory, draft capital, or age alignment to fit the Browns' strategic plan. While outside narratives focus on chaos and uncertainty, the locker room consistently signals clarity. That disconnect isn't just noticeable, it's jarring. This alignment matters beyond messaging. Confidence from veteran leaders accelerates growth. When young quarterbacks feel trust from the locker room, they can play freely, make decisions under pressure, and develop without the distraction of constant second-guessing. That stability directly impacts performance on the field and builds momentum for long-term success. When you stack Barry's public blueprint, Monken's hearing rationale, and the player endorsements together, it forms an unmistakable pattern. The front office is building for Sanders' development, the head coach is here to maximize young quarterback growth, and the locker room is unified behind him. Any ongoing media narrative suggesting a hidden quarterback competition is increasingly hard to justify. Fans watching closely can see the alignment, the clarity, and the intentional direction. The contrast between inside reality and outside speculation is stark, and that tension is exactly what fuels the ongoing drama around the Browns' quarterback situation. The bigger picture is where everything clicks into place. Andrew Barry's comments aren't just words, they're a strategic blueprint. When he referenced the 2020 Baker Mayfield model, it wasn't nostalgia. It was intentional signaling. This is how the Browns build around a rookie quarterback, invest in protection, weapons, and infrastructure, and create a foundation for long-term success. Fast forward to 2026 and the same principles apply, but the focus has shifted. The defense is already elite. Now the resources, coaching, and attention are aimed at the offense, specifically to support a young quarterback in his developmental window. Todd Monken's hearing is critical in understanding this timeline. Barry explicitly stated Monken was brought in for his ability to develop young quarterbacks, not established veterans, not reclamation projects. That alone tells you who the future is centered around. Deshaun Watson, while a talented veteran, is outside that window. He isn't the player Monken was hired to grow. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders is 22, on the rise and perfectly aligned with the timeline and development strategy the front office has laid out. That's intentional, not accidental. Now, consider the resource allocation. Draft capital, cap space, and roster flexibility are finite. When media speculation keeps throwing out alternatives like Malik Willis or M. Jones, it ignores the real-world costs. Even low-profile acquisitions consume cap space and opportunities that the team wants to invest in Sanders' growth. Financial reality reinforces the strategic direction. The Browns aren't debating starting Watson, they're managing cap structure, protecting development assets, and committing to a young quarterback's future. Combine that with player endorsements inside the locker room, and the narrative becomes even clearer. Myles, Garrett, Denzel Ward, Shelby Harris, and even younger voices like Quinshon Judkins all align behind Sanders. That kind of multi-level endorsement accelerates trust, stability, and chemistry. It creates an environment where a young quarterback can thrive instead of being derailed by manufactured chaos from outside media voices. In essence, the organizational timeline is fully transparent. The front office communicates a clear development plan, the coaching staff aligns with that plan, and the players reinforce it publicly. Any continued speculation about alternatives doesn't reflect analysis. It highlights a disconnect between external narratives and internal strategy. The comparison to Baker Mayfield's rookie blueprint makes the strategy impossible to ignore. Fans paying attention can see it. From GM Barry's on-record statements to Monken's developmental focus, from financial logic to player endorsements, everything points to one direction. The Browns are building around Shedeur Sanders. The process is deliberate, measurable, and aligned. The outside noise may persist, but inside the building, the path is clear, and that clarity is exactly what G. Bush is calling attention to. Beyond statements from the front office and the GM, the most critical piece of the puzzle is the locker room itself. In the NFL, the quarterback's development isn't dictated solely by draft capital or coaching strategy. It's shaped by the people around him. The support of veteran players, positional leaders, and teammates directly impacts confidence, chemistry, and performance. That's why the voices inside the Cleveland Browns' locker room carry so much weight, and why G. Bush highlights them in this debate. Take Myles Garrett, for example. As the face of the Browns' defense, Garrett isn't just any player, he sets the tone for accountability and culture. His public endorsement of Shedeur Sanders sends a powerful message. We trust him, he gets the first shot. That's not political hedging or media soundbite fluff, it's leadership language. Denzel Ward echoed the same sentiment, emphasizing trust, opportunity, and leadership. Shelby Harris went further, calling Sanders a locker room leader and affirming, "We're all behind him." Even younger voices like running back Quinshon Judkins highlighted chemistry and alignment with Sanders. These aren't isolated compliments, they form a pattern of unanimous confidence. Why does this matter so much? Because quarterback development is inherently relational. Offensive timing, protection, trust between the line and signal caller, and even sideline communication all rely on cohesion. When key players endorse a young quarterback, it accelerates stability. Stability accelerates growth. Conversely, outside speculation, Malik Willis rumors, veteran quarterback chatter, creates cognitive dissonance for fans and media alike. But inside the locker room, Sanders' position is clear. He's the quarterback the team is building around. That alignment is undeniable. Even more important, these endorsements aren't scripted or required. No one forced Garrett, Ward, Harris, or Judkins to publicly declare support. It's organic belief in the player reflected in professional judgment. That makes the statements credible, measurable, and highly relevant. The GM's and coaching staff's intentions now have reinforcement on the field, inside the most critical space for execution, the locker room. That combination of strategic planning and player confidence forms a unified ecosystem that cannot be ignored. Now compare this to media speculation. External narratives keep revisiting alternative quarterbacks despite clear organizational messaging. When fans see the locker room united behind Sanders, but headlines continue to float Malik Willis or other veterans, the disconnect becomes glaring. This is exactly what G. Bush is calling out, the friction between reality and coverage. It's not just debate, it's misaligned narrative versus actionable evidence inside the team. In short, the Browns' internal alignment is rock solid. GM Barry laid out the plan. Munkin was hired to develop young talent. Draft and cap resources are prioritized to support Sanders' growth. And crucially, the locker room is united publicly and privately behind their quarterback. That combination, executive direction, developmental coaching, and player support, creates an undeniable trajectory. Shedeur Sanders is the focus, the leader, and the future of the franchise. Any narrative suggesting otherwise isn't rooted in fact, it's noise. When the internal ecosystem is fully aligned, speculation becomes distraction. G. Bush isn't ignoring debate, he's highlighting where reality ends and manufactured uncertainty begins. For fans, understanding the locker room's endorsements is essential to seeing the true picture. While the front office and the locker room have made their stance clear, certain Cleveland media voices continue to push alternative quarterback narratives, and Malik Willis sits at the center of that speculation. On paper, Willis' name appears as a potential option, but a closer look reveals a pattern. He hasn't proven himself as a franchise quarterback in the NFL. He's bounced between teams, had limited playing time, and hasn't demonstrated the kind of developmental trajectory that aligns with a long-term rebuild. Yet somehow, his name keeps resurfacing in discussion cycles, giving the illusion of a hidden ace waiting to be unleashed. G. Bush doesn't mince words here. He points out the glaring disconnect. If the goal is to build around a young quarterback with upside, stability, and long-term growth, repeatedly elevating veterans or unproven quarterbacks doesn't make football sense, it's a distraction. Ken Carman, for example, recently aired uncertainty about whether Willis should even be considered, despite Willis' limited resume. That isn't analysis, it's amplification of noise. Malik Willis' continued presence in headlines exemplifies the tension between media-driven narratives and organizational reality. It's not just Willis. The cycle includes M. Jones, Kirk Cousins, or other veteran quarterbacks who have moved through the league without securing sustained success. Each week seems to produce a new name, floated as if there's a legitimate chance these players could take the starting job. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, the actual quarterback the organization is prioritizing, faces unnecessary scrutiny. G. Bush highlights this as a deliberate pattern. Controversy and speculation generate clicks, engagement, and conversation. Clear developmental plans do not. A settled quarterback situation doesn't trend the same way as uncertainty does. This has a ripple effect beyond just media chatter. Fans hear speculation about Willis or other alternatives and start questioning stability. Social media threads explode. Talk radio debates intensify. The narrative starts to feel like a revolving door, but it's important to separate perception from reality. The Browns drafted Sanders, invested in coaching for young quarterbacks, shifted offensive resources toward his development, and secured public endorsements from core players. Every measurable data point supports the same conclusion: Sanders is the developmental focus. Financial factors reinforce this further. Veteran acquisitions, including potential trades or signings, cost real resources, cap space, draft capital, and coaching attention. Diverting these resources toward alternative quarterbacks slows down the growth of the chosen developmental quarterback. Willis might be inexpensive in draft capital, but he would still require attention and investment that the Browns are already dedicating to Sanders. Repeated speculation ignores this reality and misleads fans into thinking there's a genuine competition when, strategically, there is. The takeaway is clear. Malik Willis and other rumored alternatives aren't part of an actual long-term plan. They're part of a media-driven cycle that prioritizes engagement over accuracy. The contrast between inside-the-building alignment and external chatter highlights a core tension: clarity versus confusion, reality versus rumor. Fans who focus on organizational signals, the GM, the coach, the locker room, and resource allocation, see the truth. External speculation, however loud, does not change the plan. Shedeur Sanders is the quarterback the Browns are building around, and any narrative suggesting otherwise is manufactured noise, not fact. Now let's break down the financial and strategic reality behind the quarterback conversation, because this is where perception and facts start to drift apart. Fans often hear rumors about veteran quarterbacks like Deshaun Watson, Malik Willis, or other options, and the narrative becomes who will start. But G. Bush makes it clear that much of this confusion ignores one of the most critical aspects of NFL roster construction: cap realities, draft capital, and resource allocation. The Browns' current roster already has guaranteed contracts that carry significant weight. Deshaun Watson remains under contract, but that doesn't mean the team plans to build around him. His guaranteed money creates a financial anchor that limits flexibility, not a directive to start him week one. Moving him or restructuring his contract isn't just about football logic, it's about navigating the salary cap. This is basic NFL economics, yet it's almost always glossed over in media narratives. Fans see Watson's name and assume starting priority, while insiders understand the difference between financial obligation and developmental focus. Draft capital, another critical asset, also plays into this. The Browns invested a first-round pick in Shedeur Sanders, signaling long-term commitment. First-round investments aren't casual decisions. They represent both financial and strategic alignment. To divert attention or resources to a veteran or alternative quarterback, especially one without a proven track record like Malik Willis, would not only cost cap space but also slow the development of the intended franchise quarterback. Each roster move has real opportunity costs: playing time, practice reps, coaching focus, and even team chemistry. G. Bush points out that when media repeatedly float alternatives without addressing these realities, it misleads fans and creates artificial controversy. Cap realities also highlight why some speculated quarterbacks aren't viable options. Signing a veteran means paying significant guaranteed money or committing future draft assets. That can constrict flexibility for other roster needs, offensive weapons, defensive support, or free agent signings. Meanwhile, the young quarterback the team is building around, Shedeur Sanders, benefits from every available resource being funneled into his growth: offensive coaching, talent around him, and a structured development plan. The financial and strategic logic is simple: invest in your future, don't divert resources to non-strategic alternatives. Beyond dollars and contracts, this also impacts perception. Media coverage often elevates alternatives like Willis or Jones as if they're legitimate competitors. That creates a false sense of instability among fans who don't see the cap and roster mechanics at play. But the truth is that organizational strategy and financial commitment align perfectly behind Sanders. The GM, the coaching hire of Todd Monken, the public endorsements from core players, all of it points to one developmental trajectory. Cap realities just reinforce what is already evident from these statements. This gap between perception and reality is why G. Bush emphasizes accountability in media reporting. Repeating narratives that ignore financial constraints isn't just misleading, it drives engagement by manufacturing tension. Uncertainty sells clicks, but clarity doesn't. And in this case, clarity is simple. The Browns drafted Sanders, structured resources around him, hired a developmental-focused coach, and made key financial commitments. The media noise about alternative quarterbacks doesn't change these facts, it just confuses fans. In short, cap realities, guaranteed contracts, draft investments, and resource allocation all point in the same direction. Shedeur Sanders is the quarterback the Browns are building around. Any narrative suggesting otherwise is a mismatch between perception and organizational reality. Understanding this distinction is critical to separating hype from strategy, rumor from planning, and opinion from fact. When the GM, coaching staff, and players are all aligned behind one quarterback, the only confusion comes from those who choose to ignore the evidence. Now let's dive into a layer that often gets overlooked, but is just as critical as cap realities and roster construction: why media coverage behaves the way it does, and how incentives shape the narrative around quarterbacks in Cleveland. This is where G. Bush's insight becomes essential because it explains why, despite organizational clarity, fans are still seeing daily debates about Malik Willis, M. Jones, or even Deshaun Watson as potential starters. The key point G. Bush makes is that controversy is currency. In sports media, stability doesn't sell clicks. A settled quarterback situation, even if strategically sound, lacks the drama needed to dominate social feeds, trigger radio call-ins, or generate engagement in comment sections. Fans rarely tune in to hear. The GM is confident in the young quarterback and has built a plan to support him. It's not scandalous, it's not explosive, and it doesn't spark debates. In contrast, suggesting there's a secret plan or that the current QB might be replaced creates tension. Tension drives clicks, clicks generate revenue, and revenue protects jobs. That's the incentive structure shaping coverage. This isn't necessarily malicious, it's systemic. Media outlets and personalities are incentivized to maximize attention, and the easiest way to do that is through repetition and speculation. When Malik Willis or veteran names are floated week after week, it keeps fans engaged, keeps the conversation spinning, and maintains relevance for outlets that thrive on controversy. And when fans absorb these narratives without seeing organizational statements like Andrew Barry's comparison to Baker Mayfield's 2020 development plan, a false sense of chaos takes root. That's how perception can drift from reality. G. Bush highlights another important element: selective amplification. Positive signals from within the team, Myles Garrett backing Sanders, Denzel Ward reinforcing his opportunity, Shelby Harris praising his leadership, Quinshon Judkins nodding chemistry, don't get the same headlines as speculative quarterback alternatives. Why? Because internal alignment doesn't drive emotional reactions the way a hidden ace narrative does. When you stack media behavior against organizational clarity, you start seeing a pattern. Clarity is underreported, speculation is overstated. That gap isn't coincidence, it's a natural result of incentive-driven coverage. And it's not just about attention, it's about control over the narrative. By constantly highlighting uncertainty, some media voices effectively position themselves as gatekeepers of information. Even when the front office, coaching staff, and locker room are aligned, the repeated focus on alternatives makes fans question the stability of the franchise. This anybody but Sanders perception isn't grounded in football logic or roster strategy, it's fueled by engagement economics. G. Bush calls it out explicitly because it distorts understanding. When people connect the dots between incentive structures, repeated speculation, and fan anxiety, the picture becomes obvious. Not all narratives are created equal, and some exist because they benefit the storyteller more than the audience. The takeaway is stark. Sports debate should be rooted in facts, logic, and organizational signals, not engineered chaos. The Browns' clear messaging, the 2020 Baker Mayfield blueprint, the hearing of Todd Monken for young quarterback development, the public endorsements from Pro Bowl teammates provides measurable anchors. When coverage ignores those anchors in favor of recycling speculative alternatives, it isn't analysis, it's narrative manipulation. Fans deserve coverage that aligns with reality, not coverage that profits from manufactured doubt. Ultimately, media incentives and narrative manipulation explain why, despite crystal-clear alignment behind Shedeur Sanders, fans continue to experience a revolving door of quarterback chatter. Controversy sells, clarity doesn't, and that tension fuels the ongoing debate. Recognizing this dynamic helps viewers separate hype from strategy, perception from fact, and speculative storytelling from intentional organizational direction. In Cleveland, as G. Bush emphasizes, understanding the why behind media behavior is just as important as understanding the who in the quarterback room. Now that we've dissected the media incentives and narrative manipulation, let's turn to the backbone of this entire quarterback conversation: the Browns' organizational blueprint and how public clarity reveals the real direction of the franchise. This is where Andrew Barry's statements, coaching hires, and locker room endorsements intersect to create a clear picture, one that often gets lost in the swirl of speculation about Malik Willis or Deshaun Watson. First, consider the historical comparison Barry drew to Baker Mayfield's rookie season in 2020. That wasn't a casual throwback or an offhand comment, it was strategic. In 2020, the Browns committed fully to their rookie quarterback by surrounding him with protection, weapons, and a structured system. They built the offense around Mayfield while continuing to develop a defense that wasn't yet elite. Barry referencing that blueprint in 2026 signals a nearly identical approach, but with the roles reversed. The defense is already strong, playoff ready, and the offensive side of the ball is now the primary focus. The message is crystal clear. The organization is prioritizing supporting a young quarterback through infrastructure, coaching, and offensive resources. That blueprint becomes even more explicit when you examine Todd Monken's hearing. Barry didn't hesitate when asked why Monken was chosen as head coach. He said Monken was brought in for his ability to develop young quarterbacks, not to maximize a veteran's output or manage a short-term solution. That detail is critical because it eliminates any notion that the Browns are shifting their focus to a 30-year-old Deshaun Watson. The timeline, age, draft capital, and developmental window all align perfectly with Shedeur Sanders, the 22-year-old quarterback drafted to be the centerpiece of this rebuild. Monken's presence as a developmental head coach reinforces the narrative that Sanders is the one around whom the offense will be structured. Next, consider locker room alignment, which is just as important as front office clarity. Multiple cornerstone players, Myles, Garrett, Denzel Ward, and Shelby Harris, have publicly endorsed Sanders. Garrett emphasized accountability and growth, Ward reinforced that Sanders has a legitimate opportunity, and Harris highlighted his leadership in the locker room. Add Quinshon Judkins praising chemistry and collaboration on offense, and you have all position groups echoing the same developmental support. This isn't mandated PR messaging, it's organic, genuine belief inside the building. When the GM, head coach, and team leaders are all sending a consistent message, that's a signal the developmental blueprint isn't just theoretical, it's active, intentional, and publicly reinforced. Bari didn't leave these connections implied. By drawing the line from 2020 to 2026, referencing the Mayfield model, highlighting Monken's hearing purpose, and showing how offensive resources are shifting towards Sanders, he laid out a roadmap for the team's quarterback strategy. This is a rare level of public transparency in the NFL. Teams don't usually spell out how young quarterbacks are being developed, how coaching hires align with that plan, or how resources are being allocated to ensure success. The fact that the Browns did it on record makes the narrative clear. Shedeur Sanders is their developmental priority. Now contrast this organizational clarity with the external chatter. Despite these statements, the daily conversation in Cleveland media continues to float alternatives, question readiness, and speculate about veteran or fringe quarterbacks. That contrast is exactly what G. Bush highlights. It creates unnecessary friction and fan anxiety because the facts are already public. If the conversation matched the organizational blueprint, there would be less speculation, fewer rumors, and more focus on actual performance development. The takeaway is undeniable. The combination of GM strategy, coach hearing rationale, player endorsements, and resource allocation aligns squarely behind Sanders. The offensive investment, the structured approach, and the developmental window all mirror the clarity seen in the Mayfield blueprint 6 years ago. Any coverage suggesting otherwise isn't analyzing football, it's creating drama for engagement. Fans need to understand that the blueprint is public, measurable, and intentional. Clarity exists, the debate shouldn't be who will start, but how will Sanders develop and maximize this infrastructure. In short, the organizational blueprint doesn't leave room for ambiguity. Shedeur Sanders is the quarterback around whom the Browns are building the offense, the development plan, and the long-term future. When you connect the dots from 2020 to 2026, from front office to locker room, and from hearing to resource allocation, the narrative is unambiguous. The only confusion comes from external speculation, not internal direction. And as G. Bush emphasizes, recognizing this clarity separates fans who follow facts from those who get lost in manufactured chaos. As we close this deep dive into the quarterback debate, there's a critical lesson for every fan, analyst, and casual observer. What you see on social media, what dominates headlines, and what sparks 24/7 speculation rarely reflects reality. The drama around the Browns' quarterback situation is not just about talent evaluation. It's a carefully constructed narrative shaped by media incentives, public perception, and organizational strategy. Recognizing this distinction is key to understanding the true trajectory of the franchise. Let's start with media incentives. Outlets thrive on clicks, debates, and heated conversations because controversy drives engagement. Every leaked rumor, every hypothetical trade, and every hot take is designed to keep audiences watching, sharing, and arguing. It's not malicious, it's business. But it creates a distorted view, one where speculation often overshadows facts. Headlines may hint at quarterback uncertainty or locker room tension, but when we examine the Browns' internal communications, hearing patterns, and front office decisions, a very different story emerges. The organization is strategically aligned around a young quarterback, building an infrastructure to ensure his development and long-term success. That brings us to organizational clarity. From Andrew Bari's explicit references to developmental blueprints, to Todd Monken's role as a quarterback-focused head coach, to endorsements from cornerstone players like Myles, Garrett, and Denzel Ward, the evidence is public, consistent, and verifiable. The Browns are not leaving anything to chance. They've signaled loudly and clearly that Shedeur Sanders is the cornerstone of their future. The infrastructure is designed to protect, teach, and optimize him. Any chatter about veterans stepping in or uncertainty in the lineup ignores the intentional design behind the scenes. Locker room alignment reinforces this clarity. Sanders isn't just a draft pick. He's being integrated into a team culture that supports growth, accountability, and leadership development. When players consistently endorse a young quarterback, it creates a psychological and tactical environment that accelerates learning and performance. This is why focusing solely on external speculation, without considering these internal dynamics, misses the heart of what the franchise is building. Now let's challenge the way fans consume narratives. It's easy to get caught in sensational headlines or social media arguments about who should start or who might fail. But the real takeaway is discernment, understanding the difference between narrative noise and organizational fact. The Browns quarterback debate is not just a story about talent, it's a case study in strategic communication, public clarity, and developmental foresight. Recognizing this allows fans to follow performance with insight rather than being swept away by manufactured drama. Ultimately, the thought-provoking insight is simple but powerful. The Browns' approach mirrors the blueprint of past successful quarterback development, updated for today's roster and competitive landscape. They've made their priorities public, aligned coaching with talent, and ensured player buy-in. The only confusion lies in external perception, fueled by media incentives and speculation. Those who look past the headlines see a franchise deliberately building for sustainable success, not short-term controversy. So the final question for every fan is this: will you let the noise dictate your perception, or will you recognize the clarity and intentionality that actually exists? Understanding the difference is what separates casual observers from truly informed followers. The Browns' quarterback debate isn't just about who plays, it's about how a franchise communicates, develops, and invests in its future, and those willing to see the blueprint will understand who is truly in control. In the end, this isn't a debate about hype or opinion. It's a masterclass in strategy, clarity, and foresight. And when you step back and connect the dots from media motives to front office planning, coaching hires, and locker room alignment, you see the truth. The Browns are building a deliberate, focused, and future-ready offense around their chosen quarterback. Everything else, just noise.